thank the folks that have made this night possible, in particular the Jackson Hole Travel and Tourism Board, whose vision it was to create a conservation festival in October in the first place, and without whose support, none of this would be possible. Kent Nelson and Wyoming Wildlife Advocates, REI, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service's National Conservation Training Center, whose $10,000 grant just funded the 2015 Shift Forward Award recipient, Raquel Rangel from California. The Vermont Community Foundation's Doug Fund, Doug and Maggie Walker, Marine Ventures Foundation, the Wilderness Society, George B. Storer Foundation, Teton Gravity Research, Cotopaxi, Marcia Kunstler, our responsible recreation sponsors, Steel, Sierra Club Outdoors, Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources, the Jackson Hole News and Guide, High Country News, the North Face, Chouinard Institute, Patagonia, and our conservation leadership sponsors, Great Old Broads for Wilderness, Outdoor Industry Association, Grand Teton National Park Foundation, Utah Public Radio, the Outdoor Alliance, Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, Latino Outdoors, Islandwood, and the Natural Leaders Network. So we've just finished up 2.5 days of exploring. Yeah. We've just finished up 2.5 days of exploring this really interesting space, this intersection of outdoor recreation and conservation, and trying to figure out how to leverage outdoor recreation for conservation gains. And we've had some incredible conversations, and I would just like to thank all of you who have come out from all these various places around the country to participate in a conversation that has been enlivened beyond any of what we could have imagined. The amount of diversity of opinions and ideas, the spectrum of ages and backgrounds have created a realization, I think, among the participants that we have a much stronger coalition of natural allies to take on the tasks of preserving and protecting these places that are so fundamentally important to all of us. And it's thanks to all of you who have come out here and been part of this Shift Summit. So thank you very much, and my applause to you. As part of the work that we've been doing, we've created something called the Principles for Advancing Outdoor Recreation and Conservation. The folks that have been part of the Shift Summit over the course of the last 2 days know it well, but in case you weren't here, I want to introduce you to it. It is 6 points that land managers, conservation advocates, and outdoor recreationists have agreed upon as a common framework to help us advance our common goals. And to support these principles for advancing outdoor recreation and conservation, we've created something that we call the Shift Pledge. So all those folks that have been here the last 2.5 days, you can now update your Facebook posts. But for everybody else, this is how you take the Shift Pledge. You can go to our website, shiftjh.org, and see that big yellow button. You click on it, and it brings you to our Thunderclap campaign. And this is a crowdsourced online flash mob. So if you support us with Facebook or with Twitter, you'll be added to a social media mob scene that drops on Monday morning. And our goal right now is to get, well, our goal when we started was to get a social reach of over 1 million. We've now done that. So this is all gravy, but we encourage you to take your phone out, go to the Shift homepage, join our Thunderclap campaign, and help us to raise the visibility for these common principles that unite all of us that love the outdoors, whether we love to recreate in them, we love them as conservation advocates, we're the stewards as land managers. We do hope that you'll help us in protecting and preserving these places that really are the sacred space that makes our country great. So tonight is a very special night. It's not the final night. Tomorrow morning, in an extension of Shift's mission of taking care of these places that we love so much, we've got My Shift. It's a community-wide cleanup. So if you're visiting and you want to plug in with the locals, meet us on the town square at 9 a.m. We've got a host of fun projects to take part in. I think Aaron Pruzan might have dibs on the best one. He's taking a flotilla down Flat Creek to clean that up with some kayaks. It's supposed to be 74 degrees tomorrow. I'm going to wear my bikini. And then tomorrow night, we have a film program, and it's a very special film program, especially to me, and which is good because I'm the one that programmed it. And what we're trying to do is use film to explore a really pressing issue, and that's how do we get those of us who are very active in the outdoors, the climbers and the skiers and the surfers and the fishermen, to take that next step beyond simple activity to elevate engagement to a level that mentorship and apprenticeship enjoy. They're hallowed traditions, mentorship and apprenticeship, in a lot of what we do. But stewardship, despite the legacy of people like John Muir and David Brower and Yvon Chouinard, is not necessarily a part of that tradition. Why not? And so tomorrow we'll be looking at that through the medium of film with some of the protagonists of the films. I hope that you will come out, and Yvon will be helping us with that, as well as the recipient for our Adventure Athlete Award tonight, Stacy Bear, Todd Tanner, and Luke Nelson. So that's tomorrow night. It begins at 7 o'clock. I invite you to join us for that. But tonight, we have the People's Banquet. And the reason that we have the People's Banquet is because we all have to eat. And we really do like our local food system. So this is a celebration of our local food system. And it's a response to a pretty impressive set of stats. We all know how many visitors we get here every year, more than 3 million. We have to feed them, and we have to feed ourselves, and we have to import approximately 96% of the food necessary to do so, which means that the food miles associated with bringing these foods to Jackson, Wyoming, are contributing to the detriment of our community. Fossil fuels are burned, carbon dioxide is emitted, our transportation infrastructure is stressed, resulting in more traffic, more congestion, more roadkill. A stronger food shed is both a conservation issue and a key to the community's long-term resiliency. When consumers, that's us, are aware of local food options and source directly from the regional food shed, the demand for local food increases. Local producers who are supported by their community, that would be us, these are our local producers, they respond by increasing supply. So we're going to buy more of your stuff, so you're going to have to grow more of your stuff to feed us, and we like that. Unlike industrially processed foods, local and regional foods produced by small farms tend to be hormone and antibiotic-free, enhancing the health of those who eat it. As local food systems become stronger, the economic, environmental, and health costs associated with imported foods are reduced. Very simple. So we're also celebrating another addition to our local food shed here tonight. It's vertical harvest. Has anybody noticed vertical harvest going? A public-private partnership with the town of Jackson, almost complete now. 3 stories, 13,500 square feet, hydroponic greenhouse. It has a climate and site-specific design that will withstand the extremes of our valley. When complete, later this fall, early winter, it's expected to grow an annual amount of produce equivalent to 5 acres of traditional agriculture, competing with currently imported produce from large-scale distributors who supply us from distant states. And it highlights a solution we all must embrace, and that is a localization of our food, which is tough to do here. We know that in addition to the climatic challenges, 96% of our land is public, and the parts that are private are pretty poor for growing things. By developing a vertical greenhouse downtown, Vertical Harvest helps us move a step closer to addressing our unique problem of heavy visitation, little agriculture, short growing season, and the impending dictates of climate change that will force us all to source our food closer to home. So tonight we applaud Vertical Harvest's visionary founders, Penny McBride and Nona Yehia. We explore the ways food and things related have the power to make or break not only our personal health, but that of the planet. And we're looking forward to a conversation after the presentation by Mark Bittman with Nona and Yvon Chouinard on food, its relationship to our valley, and its relationship to our health and that of the planet. But first, I would like to introduce you to the people that have grown tonight's meal. And to do so, I'd like to invite Kelly Smith, the Director of Operations for Slow Food.
Thank you. As Christian said, my name is Kelly Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Slow Food in the Tetons. For those of you who haven't heard of us, we are a nonprofit that works to grow our local and regional sustainable food economy by supporting producers, educating consumers, and connecting them together in the spirit of good, clean, and fair food. We strive to accomplish this mission through a number of different programs, including the Jackson Hole People's Market, the Youth Culinary Project, taste education workshops, and the Teton Slow Food Guide. For this year's People's Banquet, we collaborated with shift organizers to highlight our local producers by partnering each chef with a specific producer to utilize local ingredients for tonight's small plate offerings. We would now like to take a moment to introduce you to each of these talented local growers. So come on out, guys. All right. First up, we have Karen Hatterley and Kira Call from Hatterley Farms. They have, please hold your applause to the end. Hatterley Farms has been paired with the Four Seasons West Bank Grill. Hatterley Farms is a diversified family farm located in Thane, Wyoming in the beautiful Star Valley. They grow vegetables, cut flowers and herbs, as well as raise beef, pork, and chickens for eggs. They are also now offering fresh, unprocessed goat and cow milk. The new Hatterley Farm store offers locally produced Wind River herbs and Wyoming soaps products, as well as a wide selection of raw nuts, natural sweeteners, and other health food items. Next up, I'd like to introduce Erica Eschholtz and Ken Michael from Full Circle Farm, who have been paired with Culinary. Full Circle Farm is located in Victor, Idaho. At Full Circle, their goal is to offer the highest quality organic vegetables, eggs, meat, and poultry in Jackson Hole and Teton Valley. They believe we can change our relationship with food and land by promoting sustainable living practices through interactions with community members, collaborations with fellow farmers, and educational experiences with learners of all ages. Next, we have Chase and Cody Lockhart from Lockhart Cattle Company. They have been paired with Trio and Local this evening. Lockhart Cattle Company is a fifth-generation, family-owned and operated cow outfit in Jackson, Wyoming. This ranch focuses on producing local, high-quality grass-fed beef. All Lockhart beef is raised naturally and humanely without antibiotics or added hormones. This ranch leads the way in sustainable farming practices by focusing on the health of the ranch land, including clean water, clean air, wildlife habitat, and open space. Next, we have Willie Brooks from Roots Kitchen and Cannery, who's been paired with Persephone Bakery for this evening's small offerings. Born in Jackson, but operating out of Bozeman, Montana, Roots is a canning facility and commercial kitchen. They are a full-service food-preserving business focused on the goal of supplying regionally sourced foods to the community year-round. They strive to collaborate with local and regional farmers to promote better, more sustainable cuisine. Currently, they offer a winter farm share made from regional goods. Their specialties include jam, chutney, syrups, pies, quiche, and pickles. Next, we have Dale Sharkey from Cosmic Apple Gardens, who's been paired with Q Roadhouse and Brewery. Cosmic Apple Gardens is a 30-acre farm in Victor, Idaho that cultivates over 10 acres of certified organic garden vegetables and grazes several varieties of farm animals, including cows and pigs. Their irrigation water is gravity-fed from snowmelt straight out of the Tetons. Cosmic believes this incredibly pure water source makes all the difference in the flavor of their produce. They have been supporting our community with sustainable farming since 1996. They offer certified organic veggies, herbs, flowers, eggs, beef, and pork. Next, we have Kate Mead from the Mead Ranch, who's working with Snake River Brewing this evening. Ranching and raising cattle in a sustainable way has always been a priority of the family business. In 2002, the family placed the Mead Ranch headquarters under conservation easement, ensuring that its pristine water, native pastures, and spectacular scenery would be protected forever. Their cattle are grass-fed, never placed in feedlots, are never administered growth hormone or antibiotics, and are treated in a humane and respectful way. Next, we have Matt Fernie from Generation Farms, who's worked with Joel Hammond from Yamangani this evening. Generation Farms is a 5-acre farm in Teton Valley, Idaho. They grow non-certified organic soy, corn, and canola-free chicken for eggs and meat, as well as pastured grain and grass-fed pork. In the summer, they produce 4 varieties of raspberries and many varieties of strawberries, as well as cherries, plums, pears, and apples from the orchard. When the snow melts, they focus their growing season on root vegetables, peas and beans, lettuce, and sprouts. And finally, we have the Robinson Family Farm and Ranch. Marion, Deanne, Rob, and Soren are all here with us this evening. They supplied some of the lovely, some ingredients for the appetizers from Bistro Catering that you've already enjoyed, as well as the Banquet Inn. Located in Bedford, Wyoming, Robinson Family Farm and Ranch is a sustainable agriculture operation producing high-quality, natural food in a healthy environment. Their products include chemical-free vegetables, grass-fed and finished beef, pastured pork, and free-range chicken eggs. Robinson Family Farm and Ranch is built upon the core values of family, community, self-reliance, education, quality, health, safety, and integrity. Now I want to extend a special thank you to all of our amazing local producers for coming out this evening. And I also want to thank the many talented chefs who are out there right now getting the food ready for you for their commitment to utilizing local food and to our community. So thank you.
We have another award that we've created for the 2 most tenacious women in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Penny McBride and Nona Yehia, who began work on the vertical harvest in 1963. It's nearly complete and intend to finish before 2100. We are so grateful to have you in our community. Nona Yehia, the Renaissance woman of Jackson, Wyoming, DJ, chef, architect, and the co-founder of Vertical Harvest.
Thank you all for that warm welcome. Thank you so much, Christian, and to all the organizers of Shift, and to all of the local producers and chefs for putting together such an inspiring, delicious evening for us all to enjoy. This is such a great celebration. You guys have already set the tone. You're doing a great job. Vertical Harvest is is incredibly honored to be highlighted tonight, not only for the opportunity to engage a conversation about solutions that will have impact in our environment, but to be included as a new member of our amazing local food movement. The topic of food, where it comes from, how it's raised, it's why we're all here tonight. Like Mark Bittman, like Yvon Chouinard, we know that it is important to understand how food fits into the big picture. Vertical harvest has been the work of a great number of people, too many to list here tonight. It has also been supported by many of you, so thank you. But I have to take a moment to mention that this vision could have never been realized without the tenacity, humor, and strength of character of my partner and co-founder, Penny McBride. Both of us could not be more thrilled to be recognized tonight at the People's Banquet, with the most powerful of reasons being that we have the next 10 minutes to communicate to you the large impact that this relatively small project will have on our community. The idea of a vertical farm is not new. The image I'm showing you is, unbelievably, from the 1930s World Fair. This simple greenhouse furnished with rotating carousels demonstrates simply the ability to grow a substantial amount of food just by going up. What is new are the increasing pressures on our growing population our growing population is putting on the planet. I think Christian put that framework pretty well in his introduction. The UN has predicted that by the year 2050, the global population will increase by 3 billion people, and that food production will have to increase by 70% to keep up. 80% of our arable land is already used to capacity. Clearly, there's a need for a new model of farming to supplement traditional methods. What is vertical harvest? In case you don't know, in its simplest form, it's an effort to build a 3-story hydroponic greenhouse on an infill piece of land located in the heart of our downtown. Once it's completed, though, it will be much more than that. Here's a quick view into what we have envisioned. The building is essentially 3 greenhouses stacked on top of one another. And each floor, as you can see, will be able to grow a different crop. We will use carousel technology that we saw in that 1930 project in conjunction with traditional hydroponic greenhouse growing methods to produce up to 100,000 pounds of lettuces, herbs, tomatoes, and microgreens a year. This produce will be sold to local restaurants, to grocery stores, and directly to the community within a week of when it's harvested. Let's just pause for a moment to discuss some of the benefits of hydroponic farming. Because we're growing in a controlled environment, the losses are much less than traditional agriculture. Our system uses recirculated water to grow plants, which can be up to 90% more efficient than other methods. Since we don't have the intensive equipment used on farms and we're reducing the amount of food trucked into our community, we're also able to cut down on the fossil fuels used bringing food into our valley. Finally, and importantly, we will not use harmful pesticides and fertilizers, and there is absolutely no agricultural runoff when farming hydroponically. The food that you will grow will not only be fresh, affordable, and sold to you at the height of its nutritional value, but growing it will provide consistent, meaningful employment to our town's citizens with developmental disabilities, who have become a real team already. Many of them have been training already for 2 years to become our farmers of tomorrow. We are excited to report, despite all the rumors, that after 6 years of planning, preparing, and politicking, we are 3 months away from finishing this flagship project. In the spring of next year, you will be able to purchase a tomato that was grown in the heart of downtown, all while you were out skiing. I'm going to go back really quickly. We've accomplished much. The funding for the building is complete. We're excited to report that we've hired our head farmer, who's arriving next week. We'll be planting in January, but we still need your help. We are embarking on a one-time campaign called Cultivate that will ensure vertical harvest's fiscal health and our ability to have a strong impact on the community. Once we reach these goals, the greenhouse will be financially sustainable, and we will not come back to financial support again. Instead, we will support others. We will support our local producers by cultivating collaboration and highlighting the work of other producers and organizations through the implementation of our 4 core values. The first is independence. We have already witnessed a profound impact on our trainees' lives. They have learned about every aspect of starting an innovative business and are our town's experts in hydroponic farming. This spirit of empowerment does not end with them. We will collaborate with our schools so that the next generation will learn about the importance of local food production from our current trainees turned trainers. We will cultivate wellness to contribute to a healthy community. We will engage programs like the Wellness Institute at St. John's Hospital, donating produce to their diabetes program and creating a living classroom in the greenhouse to communicate the immense health benefits of making the simple choice to eat plants. We will cultivate awareness of the importance of a sustainable community as we highlight our partnerships with the town of Jackson. Not only made Shift possible, but has helped a great deal with vertical harvest, the state, and with events such as Shift, which enable us to share our knowledge with other communities that are interested in understanding how local projects can have a global effect. We will cultivate inspiration to continue to foster the spirit of experimentation and creativity that you supported to make this project a reality. We will engage artists, writers, and policymakers that visit our town to create a more connected community. And lastly, since I have your attention tonight, I wanted to make sure that I address the question that I know is on a lot of your minds. The 4-story Marriott will not sink vertical harvest. We incorporated the plans for the hotel in our very first feasibility study. Don't worry, after 6 years worth of work, we've got this. By this time next year, we will be cultivating a more empowered, healthy, sustainable, and connected community that can truly inspire the world. It is in the context of all of this that I am honored to introduce tonight's keynote speaker. I truly believe that Mark Bittman's core message is extremely important at 2 different scales. First, that the power of food has the ability to affect us at a very personal level in terms of our own health, but that it is inextricably linked to the health of our planet. In his career, Mark has not only covered cooking and eating in his minimalist column that ran in the New York Times for 13 years, and in more than a dozen cookbooks, many of which are fraying at the seams in my own kitchen, but he has written extensively on policy, agriculture, health, and the environment. Until recently, Bittman was the opinions columnist for the Times, and it was in this work that Mark taught me about the horrors that a tomato endures as it makes the journey to our grocery stores, inspiring me and many others to find ways to participate in a solution. Mark left the New York Times in September of this year, and while this departure was devastating to me and to my kitchen, he has given us solace by not only announcing the release of How to Cook Everything Fast, but by coming all the way to Wyoming with his message in hand. We are very privileged to have him here tonight. Please help me give the warmest of welcome to Mark Bittman.
Thank you. It's great to be here late. I didn't say that. Well, I started giving a talk something like this 10 years ago. I started it with this slide of this beautiful cow next to this horrifying mushroom cloud. And I said something like this: only once before has the fate and health of humanity and the fate and health of individuals been so intertwined. There was the bomb, and there's now. Now, it's not really the cow's fault. And it's certainly not the fault of the cows who were raised by farmers who are conscious of these issues. But we could say, I'd argue, that it is in large part the food system's fault. Food and how it's produced is the most important medium and long-term issue facing humanity right now. With food, we live and die as individuals and as a species. Not only would fixing food keep us from killing the planet and many, many humans, and for that matter, animals, which of course no one wants to do personally on a regular basis. Fixing food is our best issue for moving other issues forward. It's not a question of veganism, it's not a question of paleo, it's not a question of vegetarianism, it's a question of environment. And I don't only mean the food system's awful effect on our environment, which I'll get to, but the environment the food system creates and its impact on us personally. When choices are bad, we make bad choices. If I give you a choice between Hot Pockets and pizza, and Count Chocula, and lean cuisine, and a frozen burrito, and Lunchables, I'm putting you in an environment where the good choice is either hard to find or doesn't exist. That's what our food system is doing. It's creating an environment where the healthy choice, the good choice, can only be found by making an effort. Without an effort, without sustained efforts, we make bad choices, and that dooms us. When I say that only once before has the fate and health of humanity and the fate and health of individuals been so intertwined, I'm not kidding. There was the bomb, and there's our food system. Short term, it may not look that way. There's the immigrant crisis, there's the economy, there's the wacky Republicans, and the like. But if we fix food, much else falls into place. Because where we go from here will determine not only the quality and the length of individual lives, but whether, if we could see the earth a century from now, we'd recognize it. Today's food system is literally a holocaust of a different kind, and hiding under our desks isn't going to help. Like the bomb, it's sort of solvable, but we have to pay attention, and too many people are not doing so. What's sustainability? Sustainability means the capacity to endure. Our so-called food system cannot endure. It uses too many resources. It's a major, if not the leading contributor to global warming, and it's wrecking our bodies. It could be, at this point, that 90% of disease is chronic, that is environmental, not genetic. And much of that's caused by diet. So you have a food system that poisons the planet and destroys health. That's the worst food system you can imagine, and it can't endure. Even some government officials are finally recognizing this, arguing that the current proposed dietary guidelines, and the dietary guidelines are government-issued guidelines that say, here's how people should eat. Some people are saying, and this is a quote from Kathleen Merrigan, sanction and elevate the discussion of sustainable diets, that the dietary guidelines should do that. By acknowledging benefits of sustainability, the government would open itself up to greater demand for sustainability investments and would signal to consumers that such foods are preferred. In other words, this means take sustainability into account when proposing what people should eat. Of course, Merrigan is among the most intelligent and progressive people to have worked in the Department of Agriculture, and of course she quit. She had to quit because she says things like, we need to reduce meat consumption for sustainability reasons. She might have added as well as health reasons, but no one's perfect. Her former boss, who was the two-faced Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, who sadly is being considered as vice president by Hillary Clinton, shot down the idea that sustainability would be considered at this time. Much of what Vilsack said, and much of what he says, is gobbledygook. But this is pretty clear. The 2015 guidelines are still being drafted, but because this is a matter of scope, we do not believe that the 2015 guidelines are the appropriate vehicle for this important policy conversation about sustainability. That means no. There's no more important discussion to have, of course. Our diet affects the environment, as does the way we grow, prepare, and market food, as does the food we choose to grow and eat. And all of that affects the environment as well. This is the second most important point I'm going to make tonight. These things right here are not coincidental, and their intersection is going to be either happy or tragic depending on the outcome. You can't establish an agricultural system, either intentionally or anarchically, as ours has been established, without affecting the environment. You can't establish an agricultural system without affecting diet and therefore health. You can't make desirable changes in diet and health without making desirable changes in the agricultural system. You can't make desirable changes in diet and health without affecting the environment. It's like a closed system. Diet is health. Diet is about what we grow. Diet is about environmental impact. And all of those things are about diet. It's a closed system. If we absorb that and we unpack that and we live that, things would fall into place and all the talks in the world would be superfluous. Killing people via diabetes and other chronic diseases and killing people via global warming may not seem that closely related. But if you acknowledge agriculture's role in greenhouse gas production, and you acknowledge its role in producing junk food and tainted animal products, the problems are very closely linked. So let's back up a little bit and take a look at that. A couple of weeks ago, the Associated Press, the AP, made a change to its style book. When describing those who dispute the world is warming from man-made forces, in other words, climate change deniers, AP writers are now instructed to avoid the word skeptics and instead opt for those who reject mainstream climate science. That is a good thing. That's because skepticism promotes scientific inquiry, critical investigation, and the use of reason in examining controversial and extraordinary claims. With more than 90% of peer-reviewed scientific literature in agreement that the world's climate is changing from the buildup of heat-trapping gases and is largely accelerated by human activity, the AP no longer feels that skepticism is the right word. If someone isn't on board at this point, they're not skeptical. They just reject the science, without evidence. Even the Pope agrees with this. On his recent visit to the White House, the pontiff explained that climate change is a problem which can no longer be left to a future generation, and challenged us to act decisively to take care of our common home. Cute as the Pope is, it's sad that he doesn't see women's rights in the same way. But okay. There are some other things that the, to me, mysteriously beloved Pope fails to see. Here's another one that's relevant. In his call to action, and in conversations about climate change across the country and around the world, we hear a lot about energy and fossil fuels and oil and infrastructure and jobs. What we don't hear very much about in these conversations, though, is the word agriculture. And we almost never hear the word diet. Yet diet and ag are fundamental contributors to climate change. Where are climate change activists when it comes to agriculture? Almost nowhere. We hear a great deal about the impact of climate change on agriculture. We hear almost nothing about the impact of agriculture on climate change. When we think about what climate change means, changing temperatures, extreme weather events, drought, it's easy to imagine how terrible it's been and will be for farmers and ranchers. But agriculture isn't just an industry falling victim to environmental stress and degradation. It's a system that causes those things. We know that transportation is a big producer of greenhouse gases, so we devote a lot of attention to vehicle emissions and energy efficiency standards. And that's important because transportation accounts for about 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. But agriculture accounts for twice that number, double that of the transportation sector. In fact, agriculture is the single biggest contributor of greenhouse gases of any one economic sector. And contrary to what you might think, this isn't largely about food miles, though those do matter. It's more about these three drivers: tropical deforestation, which releases carbon dioxide, industrial livestock production, which releases methane, and the overuse of chemical fertilizers, which release nitrous oxide. We've cleared about 40% of all the land on Earth for various purposes. Though at this point, more than half the world's population lives in urban and suburban areas, cities account for just 1% of the land. The rest is agriculture. Think about this the next time you fly across country and you'll see it for yourself. How much land are we talking about here? How much is in cultivation? About the same size as South America, all of it. But that's cultivated land, so that's not all of it. We use more land than that for grazing, about the same size as the continent of Africa. And in order to support 2 continents worth of land to feed the world, agriculture currently accounts for 90% of freshwater consumption. Meat production deserves special treatment, especially since the global demand for meat has multiplied in recent years. Everyone wants to eat like an American. And yet, if everyone did, we'd need 4 Earths to produce enough meat. We currently have only 1. Yet global meat production and consumption are increasing thanks to growing affluence, growing marketing, and the global proliferation of huge confined animal feeding operations, or CAFOs. These are the now familiar assembly line meat factories, which not only treat animals like widgets and encourage the growth of antibiotic-resistant superbugs, but consume enormous amounts of energy, pollute water supplies, generate significant greenhouse gases, and require ever-increasing amounts of corn, soy, and other grains, a dependency that in turn has led to the destruction of vast swaths of the world's tropical rainforests. We hear a lot about feeding the 9 billion, and I'm only going to address that here to the extent that I'll say that the problem isn't so much that our concentration is growing. There are already enough calories produced to feed 9 billion people. The problem, to a large extent, is poverty, and to a lesser extent, distribution, and the choices of what we do with our food that leave people hungry. And it's this last one that ties into what I'm talking about here. Because the food choices that we make and the environment big food has created to limit those food choices are profoundly affecting not only our health, but our climate. The solution to hunger is reducing poverty, but the solution to other forms of malnutrition, the kind that's so prevalent in the United States, the kind that causes obesity, heart disease, cancers of all sorts, and other so-called lifestyle diseases, perhaps including Alzheimer's, is to change our diet. Changing the standard American diet has the power to end malnutrition, reduce chronic disease, and markedly slow the generation of greenhouse gases. Experts who are serious about disease reduction recommend that adults eat just over ½ pound of meat a week. Meanwhile, the average per capita consumption in the United States and in most other English-speaking countries is about ½ pound a day. What's worse, meat and junk food and the staggering quantities of them that we eat have largely been produced with the support of our government agencies and at the expense of a health and earth-friendly diet. The news isn't all bad. There are farmers around the country, and you met some of them before, and around the world who are setting examples of how to grow food sustainably and efficiently. And at the same time, scientists and policymakers are coming up with viable solutions, if only we'd attend to them. But a couple of anecdotal examples. Liz Carlisle, a colleague of mine at Berkeley, in her book Lentil Underground, tells the story of a group of Montana farmers who shunned the fossil fuel-based grain monoculture for a different, more traditional crop, the lentil, and a philosophy of sustainability. And these farmers are not environmental martyrs. They're businesswomen and men whose lentils are a hit in the market. Another great example can be found in Iowa, where farmers are planting native plants in narrow prairie strips along their corn and soybean crops. This simple step reduces erosion, runoff, and sediment losses, which in turn improves soil health and results in cleaner water. It supports plant and wildlife diversity. It provides habitats for birds, mammals, other critters, important insects like the monarch. It even enhances recreation opportunities. It's an agricultural win-win-win, where prettier landscapes are providing natural habitats for wildlife, recreation for nature lovers, while also making the soil richer and improving carbon sequestration. And to make it even better, this innovative and effective conservation practice is neither space nor cost intensive. It raises yields rather than lowering them. These examples, excuse me one second. It's very dry here. And there's not a lot of oxygen either. These examples of farms that are doing things right are promising because they help us think about policies that could support these types of practices. We know part of the reason many farmers do it wrong is that our policies encourage them to by providing financial incentives. These examples help us imagine how we might shift those incentives to change what's economically viable and shift our support and attention to practices that are more sustainable. There's no silver bullet to fix a broken food system and to heal a damaged planet, but these types of practices echo climate change mitigation strategies called for by the International Panel on Climate Change in their most recent report, which points to cropland management and restoration of organic soils as the most cost-effective mitigation strategies. Of course, the IPCC barely talks about diet. And as meat and dairy consumption rises worldwide, so does the amount of cropland that goes to feeding these animals rather than people directly, a process which drastically reduces the efficiency of the calories we grow. You may know that it takes roughly 5 times as many calories to produce a pound of beef as it does a pound of grain. But if we're able to target crop production used for animal feed and other non-food uses like ethanol, which uses more energy than it creates, if we have that cropland instead be used for direct consumption, we could feed a lot more people on the same amount of land, reducing greenhouse gases and chronic diseases. There are literally dozens of legitimate policy initiatives that can reduce greenhouse gases, clean up agriculture, and indirectly improve our diet. The problem is that we can barely get any of them down. So it becomes time to look at our personal food policies. Our agricultural system is environmental, it's political, it's personal. Reducing our calories can reduce our carbon footprint. Cutting even some meat out of our diets can cut some methane out of our atmosphere. If Americans were to reduce meat consumption by just 20%, it would be as if we all switched from a standard sedan to a Prius. And while we engage in this global agricultural system every day and with each meal, I don't want to reduce this issue, which is an issue of global magnitude, to what's at the tip of your fork. It's not your fault. It's not our fault. But we can take some responsibility, and by taking responsibility, we can improve our own lives. This is what I was talking about at the beginning. What's good for you is good for the planet. And there's a near perfect alignment there. There are ways we can work on political issues, of course, but fixing our personal food policy is the most straightforward thing we can do. I can give you numbers that tell you how damaging industrially produced animal products are to your health and to the environment, but you hear that stuff every day. You hear every day that junk food is bad for you too. But from this point to the end of this talk, which is pretty soon, I'm going to talk about the 2 things that you can do to make your own food policy better. By doing these 2 things, you'll reduce your own carbon footprint and you'll take control of your own health. I'm not anti-meat. I ate meat today. I'm what you might call a less meatarian. But there's no question that some chronic diseases are the direct result of eating a Western diet. Global warming was unforeseen. We didn't know that pollution did more than cause bad visibility and perhaps a few lung diseases here and there, as if that weren't bad enough. But the current health crisis is a little more the work of the evil empire. We know what a good diet is now. Ignorance isn't an excuse. Overconsumption of industrially produced animal products, and especially of junk food, is the problem, along with our paltry consumption of plants. The evidence that plants promote health is overwhelming. You eat more plants, you eat less other stuff, you live longer and healthier lives, period. But, and we all know this to be true, we see this every day, everywhere we go, the foods we're most encouraged to eat, the place where almost all the marketing dollars in food goes, is to junk food and industrially produced animal products. And one of those is useless from the get-go, and the other is harmful to the planet and our bodies in large quantities. So let's figure something out. 2 rules, only 2, can govern your personal food policy. The first is this. Let's define food. The dictionary says that food is any nutritious substance that people or animals eat or drink, or that plants absorb in order to maintain life and growth. Nutritious, by the way, means wholesome, good for you, full of nutrients. Really good for you, not like Wonder Bread. Now, just for the fun of it, let's define poison. Poison is a substance that's capable of causing the illness or death of a living organism when introduced or absorbed. It's kind of the opposite of food. Food promotes health, poison promotes non-health. So soda, soft drinks, clearly, are closer to poison than they are to food. They cause more illness than health. This is true of many things in the supermarket, not in single doses, of course. You don't eat the stuff and drop dead. But a regular diet of sugary foods, of highly processed foods, of foods with fake ingredients, is a diet that's not relying on food. So the first rule is this: define what food means. I don't really care where you draw the line. You can define this personally, but draw it somewhere. Is soda food? No. Are health bars that have the same nutritional profile as Snickers food? No. Is anything, including yogurt, that gets 50% of its calories from sugar food? No. Is a chip, and I don't care whether it's a whole grain chip or a Pringle, is a chip that gets 90% of its calories from chemically extracted oil, whose basis is monoculture, food? No. In fact, I think somewhere between 40 and 80% of the stuff sold in supermarkets doesn't qualify as food. Some of it qualifies as poison. That's dictionary definitions, promoting ill health. The reigning wisdom about shopping is shop the perimeter when you go to the supermarket. But that's no longer true. The marketers heard you, and they put the bakery on the perimeter. They put the deli on the perimeter. They put the prepared foods and the candies on the perimeter. Now, here's how to shop the supermarket. Buy food. Decide what's food, what encourages your health and what poisons your body, and stick with the former. I don't need to give you a list. You decide. What's food? Buy that and eat it. Now the second rule. Second rule is this. Eat more foods from the plant kingdom this week than you did last week. And then eat more next week than you did this week. And eat more next month than you did last month, and next year than you did last year, and so on. First, you eliminate non-foods from your diet as best you can. And there's no hard and fast rules here. I'm not a monk. I ate potato chips yesterday. I'm okay with that. Just make your diet food dependent. And then within that diet, eat more fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, and grains. Don't worry about nutrition. Don't obsess about protein. Eat some animal products if you like, but be moderate in eating them and try to source them well. If you eat less meat, if you eat fewer eggs, and so on, you can afford to buy better stuff to support farmers who are doing things the right way. We can continue to enjoy our food, and we can eat well, we can eat even better. We can continue to search for ingredients we love, we can continue to spin yarns about our favorite meals. But we can reduce not only our calories, but our carbon footprint. We can make food more important, not less, and save ourselves by doing so. There's more talk about climate change than ever, but we're not all talking about the right culprits or pointing to the right solutions. This isn't to say that fossil fuels are not a problem, and that reducing reliance on them is not a priority. But so too is reducing the devastating impact of contemporary agriculture and the far too powerful reign of corporate agribusiness on the health of our people and on our planet. We must pay attention to that, both in our private lives and in our public ones. Thank you. We're going to be right back. Whatever you want.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Yvon, for being here. It is such an honor to share the stage with both of you. It's all kind of pinching myself, actually. And there are so many topics that I know from your talk and from the work that you do, Yvon, that I know we want to cover tonight. But I kind of wanted to start with something really simple. Why food? When did it come to you? And how has it shaped some of the work, or all of the work that you've done?
Well, I should have a disclaimer, because I try to eat locally, but I drink globally. Well, I was talking to a woman a couple of years ago who started a baby food company, organic baby food. Her first product was organic baby food, carrots in a jar, And she was talking to me. She'd sold a company to a big multinational corporation, but she's still on the board, and she said she was stuck as to where to go next. And I said, well, the problem is you stopped at organic. I said, where are your organic carrots grown? Well, I don't know. We just buy them from, a distributor. I said, well, they could come from Baja California, where there's huge organic farms, and they're using fossil water that's millions of years old, and the workers are paid $8 a day, and they're locked up at night so they don't run away. I said, you better find out where your stuff is grown, and then what kind of carrots are you using? There's, all different kinds of carrots. I was just found out there's 23,000 varieties of barley, of which only 3 varieties are used to grow to make beer. So, and how about, there's purple carrots, and they have more antioxidants than orange carrots. And also, it makes a big difference where your carrots are grown. One of the problems with flat out saying that organic vegetables are better for you, more nutritious than non-organic, is that it makes a big difference where they're grown. Carrots should be grown wherever you get the maximum amount of minerals and little trace minerals, and that, in other words, what we're doing is we're forcing agriculture in places where we shouldn't be growing it. I mean, it's like NPR today had a big story on we're growing alfalfa for export. Well, what we're doing is, in Arizona, what we're doing is exporting water. So, in my own company, we've been doing only organically grown cotton for about 20 years. And I would say it causes, by doing that, it causes less harm. But it doesn't do any good. It's not doing any good for the planet to be growing organic cotton. But, so I want to do some good, not just cause less harm. And I just read several books now on what's called regenerative agriculture. Now, what's regenerative agriculture? It's agriculture that grows soil. Organic agriculture doesn't necessarily grow soil. And, you know, nature left by itself takes 1,000 years to grow soil. But you can really accelerate that by how you grow things. I just read one book by the Rodale Press. The end of the book, it's all about regenerative agriculture and how you can capture carbon in agriculture. In other words, you can reverse a lot of the global warming that we're doing through agriculture. Now, I'm a real pessimist about it. And everybody I know, all the smart friends I know and scientists, they're all doom bats. We don't see a way out of this. We're not gonna change capitalism. We're not gonna give up driving our personal vehicles. But this book ends up saying that if we went to a regenerative style of agriculture, which means no-till agriculture, and never leaving the ground bare, using cover crops, so that it captures carbon, if we turned 11% of the world's grazing and farmland into this regenerative style agriculture, we could capture all the carbon that we're emitting today. And in fact, the French government just announced very recently that the Minister of Agriculture said that France is committed to doing just that. And in fact, they think that if they changed all of France has lots of small farmers, if they changed their method of agriculture in France, it would equal the amount of carbon we're sequestering today. Now, I don't know if that's true, but cut it in half. Cut it in a quarter. It's the most exciting thing I've heard in a long, long time.
So both of you kind of understand that food has a systemic impact. I mean, that's what you were talking about. It's inextricably linked to who we are as people and how we engage our environment. And I guess I'm curious, Mark, in your career, kind of when that hit you. When at one point, you know, going from being the minimalist, just an avid follower, to the opinions column in the Times. When did that most strike you or impel you to do something differently?
There was, I think in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think the writing was on the wall that eventually we're going to all be eating mostly a plant-based diet. It's clear that we cannot produce enough meat for everybody to eat meat the way we do. And it's clear that eating meat the way we do, the kind of meat we do, and the way that we produce it is not good for us or the planet. Is all what I just said. I recognized that, but I didn't really know how to talk about it. And then in 2007, there was a UN report, an FAO report, that linked industrial meat production to climate change. And for me, that was a real turning point. I wrote about that. I realized I actually did have a way into writing about these things. And I started pitching those kind of pieces to the Times, where I was lucky enough to be housed anyway. So I got this enviable platform of writing about not only food and cooking, but food and eating and agriculture for the Times, and I did that.
So even though I don't quite believe it, are you a pessimist like Yvon, or are you an optimist?
Actually, I don't think Yvon, you heard the last thing he said, he's quite hopeful. I asked Wendell Berry that question a year or two ago, and he said, it's not a question of whether you're a pessimist or an optimist, it's a question of whether you're hopeful or not. And, I think you have to be hopeful, or it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. So, I am hopeful. I'm neither optimistic nor pessimistic. I don't think we know what's going to happen. I think we can only try to influence it.
Well, speaking of Yvon, I don't know if everybody in our audience really is aware of what you're doing with Patagonia Provisions, and I would love it if you gave us a description, because the more to prepare for this, the more I learned about it, the more I really feel like it can have an impact on where we as consumers can go to kind of follow the rules that Mark outlined for us. So if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I think, we need a revolution, that's for sure. The only one we're going to have is agriculture. There's no doubt about that. And I want to be in my blacksmith shop, sharpening the guillotine. Here's an example of a product we just came out with this last month. We came out with buffalo jerky. And it comes from Dan O'Brien's farm in South Dakota. He wrote a great book called Buffalo for the Broken Heart. I don't know if you've read that. But anyway, he raises buffalo. He never touches them. He just leaves them alone. South Dakota goes through periods of terrible drought. All his beef farmers around him, their business goes like this. And in a drought year, they sell their whole herd, and then they have to build it back up again. He just leaves his bison alone. And then we helped him buy a truck, a slaughter truck. So we do the slaughtering right on the land. And they do it, they slaughter the 3-year-old males. They shoot them with a copper bullet. We don't want any lead in that meat. And they drop, just like that. And the others, all around, they continue grazing. It's just like it's a non-issue for them. Yeah. It's a lot better than Ted Turner, who takes his bison and sends them to Omaha in a truck. These are wild animals. So I think this is the right way to do it. And the reason we're in partnership with him, we're going to buy up his neighbors who are all going belly up because they're trying to grow cattle where they shouldn't be grown. I mean, there's places where cattle should be, but that's not a place. And our real purpose for doing this is not to be eating buffalo, but to be restoring buffalo to the Great Plains, which are absolutely necessary for the healthy ecosystem. And we're trying to get the Lakota Sioux to regain their culture. They don't even like to eat buffalo. They were brought up in residential schools. They were fed hamburger. And they don't like the taste of buffalo anymore. And we want to change that. And so anyway, that's just one product that we're working on. And also, I have to go to the cotton farmers that we work with, and we say, look, you can't plow anymore. You're going to have to get by without tilling, and you're going to have to do cover crops. And I mean, this is going to be a big problem, but I want to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem.
Well, thank you for doing that as well. And it brings me to what I've been thinking about since we had our lunch today and a conversation. Do both of you think that we can make the most impact on our environment, as you're saying, kind of at a personal level? Or I've been thinking about, Yvon, when we were talking about how companies can be really versatile and tactical and work quickly, or is it at a governmental level? I mean, where should we look right now, or is it all three together to really to bring on this revolution that you're speaking of? Where would be the best place to start or to concentrate our efforts?
mean, as I said, I think everybody owes it to themselves to consider working on a personal level. And we can all, for want of a better phrase, have our own personal food policies. But we owe it to ourselves to be active in municipal politics at least, to be entrepreneurial and creative and intelligent ways as the two of you are. If we're parents, we should be working on school food. If we're farmers, we should be working on sustainable agriculture practices. I mean, we all have a role to play and we all do what we can. Right now, governmental change is the hardest thing to do, and we all know that. Yeah, it's laughable. And, you know, I think one of the reasons I stopped writing the opinion column, one of the things that was disappointing about it to me was that when I started it, I thought there was some low-hanging fruit that that either the government would act on or we could encourage the government to act on, that I certainly thought would happen in the next few years. And guess what? I was wrong. And that's a disappointment to me when there are things like routine use of antibiotics in meat production that are so clearly wrong and outdated and so easy to fix. And so many farmers do meat production without it, and yet the vast majority of meat production in the United States still uses antibiotics, and as a result, people are getting sick, animals are dying, and so on. Some of this stuff is so easy to fix, and you can't convince government to fix it. So again, what you need is personal decisions, you need entrepreneurial decisions, you need local government, which is more effective at making change than federal at this point. And again, as I said, everybody has a role to play. Everybody can find, someone once said to me, there's plenty of good work to be done. So find what there is that you want to do and do it.
Small scale government can be very effective. Vermont passed a law requiring labeling GMO foods. Of course, they're being sued by Monsanto. So the Department of Agriculture in Vermont said, okay, let's test to see if we can get by without GMO corn. And so they've done some test plots, and they're not only equaling, they're surpassing the amount of corn per acre using non-GMO Monsanto seeds. We can't do it without government, but sometimes small-scale governments can really get it together. I believe in that. As far as big government's not going to change till corporations tell them to change. And companies like us can lead the way in showing that it's good business. And you farmers out here that are doing this small-scale farming, you're the key to it. You just show that it's good business. And, one word of advice is don't get into the commodity business. The middleman in the food business makes all the money. And the key, like I know this French farmer has 20 cows. And he makes a living with 20 cows. Now, if he sold milk to the dairy cooperative, he'd starve to death. But what he does, he makes a really super quality cheese with his 20 cows, and he sells them at the farmer's market on Saturdays. That's the key to making small agriculture work.
And Mark, you told us what we could do on a personal level, and I know everybody here is interested in making a difference. And Yvon, I was wondering your thoughts on what an individual can do to make an impact.
Well, I used to think that designers had all the power, because they decide what color car you're going to drive, and whether it's a Volkswagen or diesel. They really control our lives, but you know what? I think consumers have the most power because we can just say no. I mean, that's powerful. You just say no. I'm not going to eat that crap. If enough of us say that, I think think we could change things around and finally get the government that we need rather than one we deserve.
Well, that leads me to my crowdsourced question that inquiring what would be the question I would ask the both of you. It was actually quite simple. What is your favorite meal?
The next one.
Well, I think it'd be sea urchins. I've got a grandkid that we're raising to absolutely love all the weird foods, and you take her to a sushi bar and you go bankrupt.
Well, thank you both, and I thought maybe we could take 3 questions from the audience. I think that this is a really great panel, and so is there anything that anyone would like to ask from the audience? Right over there.
Okay, he wants to know how you circumvent the FDA and the Department of Agriculture. Like, a small farmer has to slaughter with a government agent there. And the Buffalo farm, we do have a government agent in the truck when we slaughter. But yeah, they're the problem. That's why a lot of farmers can't sell their own cows direct. It has to go through the system. But there's ways to do that, and I think it's getting easier.
Well, even in our small retail store that we plan to have in Vertical Harvest, we went to ask the local producers if they'd like to be able to, if we could highlight their products year round, and that was the biggest obstacle. And it was kind of a disappointment. We didn't even realize that was what, some had a way around it, but it is a real obstacle that we need to, at a local level, be able to work on, I think.
I have an example. We're working with Wes Jackson of the Prairie Institute, and he's developed a perennial wheat. Wheat used to be a perennial. It's a grass, and we've hybridized it 250 times to where the stalk is only this high now, and the roots are only this deep. And he's developed a wheat called Kernza, and the roots are 15 feet long. And the nutritional content of that wheat is off the chart. And you can imagine how much carbon that's sequestered with those roots. And it's drought resistant, and we're the first ones. I'm sitting on 80,000 pounds of it right now. So we couldn't sell it because you have to go through the FDA and certify it as a food. Now they can hybridize wheat all they want, and you never have to do anything. But the fact that he did it, we had to pay $50,000 to get it certified as food.
How do you make good food accessible to everyone? I think, to me the question is how you make food accessible to everybody. So much of, again, what's sold as food is not really food. So if we were to define what food is and say we're going to encourage the consumption of food, not necessarily encourage the consumption of the stuff that marketers want to sell, that's a good first step. I'll also say it's interesting. We can sit here and bad-mouthing government, and indeed it's disappointing on so many levels that it's easy to do that. But the fact is that many kids have their best meal of the day in schools. So the fact that determining what food is good and saying this is what we want to feed our children is not necessarily a bad idea, rather than leaving that decision to marketers who are encouraging kids to think that things go better with Coke or that McDonald's will make you happy. I think that's an important lesson.
So it's really about educating and understanding what food is at its basic level. Mika.
I mean, I would say no, not 50%. In World War II, close to 50% of our fruits and vegetables were grown in backyards. But it was an emergency, and it was a different time. I think, we can't even get 50% of people to cook. And cooking is actually easier and more convenient than gardening for most of us. So, I'd say we can encourage cooking, we can encourage gardening, but we also have to somehow provide an environment where the healthy choice, the good choice, is the easy choice. And right now we make it so that the healthy choice is the harder choice. And that is, I hate to say it, but that is largely a governmental problem. And we can work on it on individual levels. Those of us who are wealthy enough, well-educated enough, determined enough, can fix our own personal food consumption. Because there's plenty of good food out there. But not everybody can do that. And we need to make it so that, you think of what an airport is like. And airports have gotten better, actually. But you think about what an airport is like. You walk into an airport, and there's a McDonald's, and there's a Wok and Roll, and there's a Cinnabon, and there's a Annie's, thank you. And there's one thing after another that's the wrong choice. Every single one of them is the wrong choice. And now you go in and you think, I remember the first time, 3 or 4 years ago, I went to an airport at 6 or 7 in the morning, and the Chipotle was open. And I think Chipotle is like a small advance on fast food. But it's an advance. And I was like, great, Chipotle is open. And as things change, it is easier to make the right choice. But it's nowhere near as easy as it ought to be. I think, for you, I said it before, you make the right choice. You don't need to understand things on a molecular level to make the right choice. And the second thing is, the other thing that I thought when I started writing my opinion column was low-hanging fruit, was limiting the marketing of junk food to children. And we have not done that at all. So if you're going to allow marketers to tell little kids what's good and what they should want to eat, you've just postponed another 20 years when you're going to have a majority of adults who understand what's good and what they really ought to be eating. Because we all know from our own experience and our own feelings that our food habits are formed when we're young. So if you allow people to say, if you allow marketers to tell kids, Coke is fun, McDonald's is fun, and so on down the line, then you're allowing another generation to grow up with a false idea of what's good and what's really food. We can't afford to do that. I don't know where that change comes from.
I think until you have food companies that you can trust that's doing the background checks for you, you have to read the labels. I mean, all these energy bars that, a lot of basically outdoor people are eating. The number one ingredient is sugar. And a lot of it is stealth, like brown rice syrup. Well, that sounds good. It's sugar. So you got to read the ingredients, and otherwise, I mean, that's the first step, certainly.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Oh, Lucy, sorry. Lucy, go ahead really quickly.
You could convince your friends to eat real food.
Thank you both so much.
You can also tell our dear governor that you believe in global warming.
Thanks, Will.
Let me know when you're ready for me to disconnect. You good? Good. I wish it was a little smoother, but we got it figured out.
Oh, I think so.
Thanks to most of your crew.
Oh, yeah, baby. Thanks for being patient with us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Take it all. Plus, I have your. You have this. I don't know.